Not caffeine.
That's right.
I just want to put a burner at sponsorships. Our school board meeting of February 12th, the first agenda item is a call to order and the Pledge of Allegiance. For those of you in the audience, the flag is up at the front here.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Next item on our agenda is the school board norms. Our norms are be prepared, be on time, value and respect each other, exercise thoughtful deliberation and conversation, be professional at the board table when visiting with the general public, speak up when the norms are not being followed, and advocate on behalf of students and keep the community in mind. Next item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion for approval? Okay, motion by Dr. Lund, second by Dr. Schab. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We will now move on to celebrating success, and we have a few people in the audience here today.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll go ahead and take this one. Tonight we have Jennifer Marshik, Secretary at Nathan Twining Elementary and Middle School. She's going to be introduced by Principal Chad Katurka. She is our classified employee of the second quarter. Congratulations to you, Jennifer. And Board Member President Flynn will present the plaque to her. And then following Sarah Tizell, English teacher at Community High School, is our certified employee of the second quarter, and she will be introduced by Mr. Terry Bohan, principal at Community High School. So let's start with Jennifer, and let's get this party started.
Right there. All right. So this is Jennifer Marshik, and I'm extremely excited to present Nathan Twining's outstanding office administrator this wonderful award. This award is a testament to Mrs. Marshik's unwavering dedication to our school and her hard work, which has significantly had an impact right off of the bat. So I think of the interview. She's actually the first person I hired at Nathan Twining. The interview that we had in early May, and the impact that she just had on me, I could tell right away that she was going to be someone that really brought something special. She has served in the Air Force previously. She has worked for different people in the Air Force in their offices. She had worked in schools. So all those things were just a ton of different skills that she could bring to our wonderful community and Nathan Twining. Her nomination came from a parent. And this parent had nothing but great things to say about the process of getting her enrolled. Jennifer has done just a great job in this parent's eyes of attending to a lot of the different needs of her daughter. And most of all, the communication from our office to the parent has really allowed that parent to be an active participant in the school and in our community. So that was something that the parent shared and was really, really thankful for. So beyond her official duties at Twining, Jennifer's efforts reflect a genuine passion for fostering those positive relationships. In fact, she's a mother of Twining own. Her daughter Ashlyn is in attendance tonight. And we all know when you have a mother in the building, she can bring just another perspective as well. And that's a perspective I really value having in the office. So thanks also, Jennifer. I'm extremely thankful and proud that Jennifer was nominated and given this award. We all know that the office is a cornerstone of our school. That is the first impression that she gives to so many of our families. So let us join together in expressing our heartfelt gratitude to Mrs. Marshick, her timeless commitment to making our school a hub of success, and, of course, her positivity and hard work. Congratulations, Jennifer, on this well-deserved recognition. Thank you.
Sounds good, thank you. I just want to say thank you very much. It means a lot. I could speak for hours on how warm my heart is right now. The fact that this came from a parent means more than I think I could ever put into words. So I'm going to take the award, very proudly hang it on my desk as a reminder that we are doing wonderful things, and meeting these families is just, it's everything. So thank you guys so much for welcoming me into this amazing district, and I'm very happy to be a part of it.
Good evening to the school board and to distinguished guests. My honor to present the Certified Employee of the Quarter to Ms. Sarah Tazell. Our school is all about promoting another road to success for students, and sometimes that road can be bumpy. Educators smooth that road for our students, and that especially includes Sarah Tazell, who is on her second round at our school. Second year as a teacher, has been employed there prior in her younger years. Ms. Tazell was nominated by a handful of different educators, but in particular, she was nominated by a student. And rather than me talking, I thought you should hear what this student had to say about Ms. Tazell. Need to get my glasses on. No, it's pretty good. Ms. Tazell is extremely devoted to her students. She makes sure that her students are comfortable. She checks in with everyone one-on-one multiple times per week. She always makes sure her students know and understand how they are doing in her class, and is there to help everyone meet their goals. She is passionate about helping her students succeed in her class, and she wants them to learn. That comes from one of her recent students who finished her class in December. And so it is my pleasure to introduce you to Sarah Tazell, the Certified Employee of the Quarter, who is joined here this evening by her husband, Mike, her 2-year-old son, Myron, and a good number of staff members from community. So, Sarah Tazell. Congratulations. Congratulations.
All right, I should warn you, I came prepared with something written because I knew once I got up here I would completely blank. So I promise it's not super long, I just needed some guidance. I am so humbled to be standing before you today as an employee of the quarter. With any good story, a little backstory is usually required. 10 years ago, I worked at community high school as the library paraprofessional, and it was during that time that I realized my dream wasn't to be a teacher, but to be a teacher at community high school. When I had to tell Terry at the end of that year that I wouldn't be returning the following school year and would be instead returning to college to finish my bachelor's degree, I'm pretty sure I warned him that I would be back. After graduating college, I worked at a few Class B schools, and while I loved what I did, they were not community. I told each of my principals that if a job opens up at community, I'm going to apply. I was always upfront with my administration that community high school was where I belonged. Fast forward to 2 years ago when an opening finally occurred and I was lucky enough to secure it. On my first day as an English teacher at community, Terry left a sticky note on my computer that said, "Welcome home." How lucky am I to work in a building as welcoming as community? There's a magic that happens within the walls of our alternative high school. There's something in the air that breeds creativity, positive relationships, and resiliency. As with any type of recognition, this honor does not just belong to me, but instead with the team that I have the privilege of working with each day at community high school. Thank you.
Thank you to both of you, and what a great segue into our celebrating success of community high school. Dr. Bohan, I was going to say, where'd he go? Go ahead.
Happy to be here to celebrate success of our school. When this opportunity presented itself a few months ago, the first thing that came to mind was the spirit of our school, which is sources of strength. And so today there is a small group of people that have a presentation on community high school and the sources of our strength. We're going to start off with Mrs. Ripplinger, our school counselor, and then multiple other individuals to share some success with sources of strength at community high school. Mrs. Ripplinger.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd first like to introduce who I have with. So if you guys want to maybe come around to my left, this is Milo, and Milo will be sharing some stuff with you soon. Our adult advisors, Emily Rue is our social worker. She's one adult advisor. And then Sherry Jurdy is a teacher at our school. Christy Robson is a para and does multiple different tasks with our students, but she's also an adult advisor for Sources. Karina Bergen, our art teacher. And then not here with us is a paraprofessional, Breeze Yanish, that also is an adult advisor. So there's 6 of us. It's pretty awesome. We also have another student with us, and that's Jalen Burnett. And so thank you for having us here tonight. So community high school, sources of strength. If you know much about our school, one of the things you'll remember is that we have new students every 3 weeks. Kids cycle in and cycle out. So it's not super easy to run a group that's consistent and cohesive, but somehow we manage. And I still, it kind of surprises me a little bit about what we do with our sources of strength. So anyway, we're here tonight to just share a couple of examples. And before we get started with that, I just want you to know that it's been 20 years ago that unfortunately we'd lost a couple students at Red River High School to suicide, and Tears, the group Tears, was born 20 years ago. And the reason I bring that to light tonight is for a little history lesson, because Tears today is still supporting sources of strength. So all the stuff that you hear that we do, it is supported every last bit by Tears and the money that they donate to us. And I mean, we have meetings where we are able to bring in pizza and things like that. So we're just super grateful to have that with us as well. So why is Sources such a valuable program? I just want to briefly remind you. Sources of Strength, you can see the wheel up there. 8 different spokes on the wheel. They did a national, worldwide survey, in fact, and asked, where do people get strength in times of need? They could put every single one of those answers into one of those 8 categories. That's how they came up with it. The whole idea is that it's an upstream approach. What that means, let's grow our strength before we're in crisis, so that when crisis happens, we know exactly who we can call on, where to go to find strength. And this is my 31st year. Yes, I'm old. Josh was my student. But anyway, I'm telling you, this is a wonderful program that makes a lot of sense to a lot of people, and it's very easy to find ways to infuse it into our school. And so we train our peer leaders, which are our students, and then they come up with the ideas, and we help carry out the different activities, the school-wide campaigns. We also, one of the activities we do every year is the Tears Talk and Walk. And this year, one of our students was invited to be the speaker at the Tears Talk and Walk, where there was almost 1,000 participants. And so tonight, Milo is going to share what he shared at the Tears Talk and Walk. Milo?
Hi, thanks for having me today. My name is Milo. I'm speaking on behalf of Community High School Sources of Strength. I wanted to start by reading a poem. The poem is called The View from Halfway Down by Allison Taffel. A trigger warning for talks of suicide. The weak breeze whispers nothing, the water screams sublime. His feet shift, teeter-totter, deep breaths, and back, it's time. His toes untouch the overpass, soon he's water-bound. Eyes locked shut but peek to see the view from halfway down. A little wind, a summer sun, a river rich and regal. A flood of fond endorphins brings a calm that knows no equal. You're flying now, you see things much more clear than from the ground. It's all okay, or would it be, were you not now halfways down? Thrashed to break from gravity, what now could slow the drop? All I'd give for toes to touch the safety back at top. But this is it, the deed is done, a silence drowns the sound. Before I leapt, I should have seen the view from halfways down. I really should have thought about the view from halfways down. I wish I could have known about the view from halfways down. I've always been a firm believer that suffering should not be the vessel by which we learn. I don't think we should have to see the view from halfways down. I think it's important to show people that there's resources accessible to us and that before we get to that point. I think we should be able to draw on each other for strength before we reach the point of suicide. Today I'm here to talk about sources of strength. We're a group of peer leaders interconnected to provide resources to students who may come to us as friends or even as strangers. We draw on our personal strengths to help us get through the time of need. We're all about being proactive in our communities. We encourage you to do the same, and we want you to know that you never have to see the view from halfways down to get help.
Thank you, Milo. My name is Sherry Dirty. I'm one of the teachers and student leaders, as Marilyn had said. One of the things I hope that you caught when Marilyn was introducing everyone is that an amazing part of our leadership at community is from various points of view. Teachers, paras, social worker. It really has helped to build relationships with our students and open up some doors for our students. So a couple of things that we wanted to highlight were the video competitions that our students from Sources of Strength have competed in. In 2022 was our first competition, and the video competition is held in Fargo through Telwell and FirstLink. And you've probably all heard of FirstLink. And so that competition focused on, for our students, the 8 sources of strength. When our students tell us sometimes their stories, they're very powerful. And it isn't about getting stuck within the story, right? It is about how they got through that story and pulling from those strengths. And what we realized with the leaders that we had that year, they were very willing to open up, share their stories, and to share their strengths. And amazingly enough, we took a small group of students down to Fargo, and sitting there at the iconic Fargo Theater, right, with our students, watching their video on the big screen, that group was recognized in first place for the video competition. So that was an awesome recognition that they received. They also received $1,000 to bring back to community high school to use for Sources of Strength events. So between that funding and what we get from tiers, it's allowed us to bring in some great activities. In 2023, so last spring, we took another group down, and they competed on the topic of stress. Now, stress, we all encounter it, right? But before that competition, it was just kind of ironic that our students identified, and as leaders, we came together and said, we need to work on our student stress within our building. How do we do that? Some comments were made about chill zones. Chill zones, if you haven't seen a chill zone or experienced it before, what we have created are these little spaces within our classrooms in which students, if they're encountering a rough day or they're having a tough moment or they just need a chance to chill, for about 10 minutes, 10 to 15, they can go in this little zone. What's in there could be a variety of things, from the funding, again, from tiers and from our winnings at the awards, the video competition. Each teacher was able to work with a leader, student leader, and kind of devise what each room's chill zone would exactly look like. So those were just some of the things that came about from those video competitions. On the next slide, I just wanted to capitalize on the things that really those competitions did for our students. We're an alternative school for many reasons, right? Our students have many stories, just like we all have different background stories. But the ability of our student leaders to share their stories has also allowed other students to come forward and feel comfortable sharing their stories. There's power in that. We have found that out, right? It helps our group members, but it also helps our school as a whole. The campaigns, which are themes that we work on, are, part of the Sources curriculum, and that really is our focus and messaging that impacts the whole school. So sometimes groups you find within a school just affect that small group of students. That would not be what our students do. Our students work on these campaigns to affect our school as a whole. So I really want to emphasize that it is a wonderful opportunity, not just for these student leaders, but for our school as a whole. And then the last thing I'd like to mention are just the healthy activities that we've been able to incorporate at Community High School. One year we went bowling as a whole school. It doesn't always happen, right, in a school district our size. And sometimes the moments when we are just being real people with our students are those that are most impactful, not just academically, right, but on a person level. And then the other healthy activity last year was, everyone will just say, Gertie, it's not called the jumpy place, but that's what I call it, Northern Air here in town. And our students really enjoyed that and allowed, again, another opportunity to bond with students.
Hi, I'm Karina Bergen, and I also teach art and as a Sources of Strength leader. So I'm going to talk about how our students get involved in the campaigns, and what we do is we meet and we do a planning and an action meeting every month. And the most recent campaign was the Connect campaign, and our student leaders went into the classrooms during our advisory time in the morning. They planned how they were going to share our campaign. Milo, your poem put it beautifully about how, we don't want to lose that chance to connect with someone. So our Connect campaign was simply that. We shared apps, for instance, a Friend Asks app, and our students got to also call a hotline to hear what it does sound like on the other end, kind of take away that stigma. And we talked about what are the stigmas behind mental illness, why is it so hard to talk about it, whereas we can go to a doctor with a physical ailment, but the mental part is a challenge. And so we kind of just offer that out for stories from our students, stories of I'm a connector and I got connected, and we displayed those. And again, our students, when they share, they become vulnerable. They did, and it's beautiful, and a lot of impact in those stories. Other things that we do, toilet talk. So our posters get placed in the restrooms and around the school. So another opportunity to connect with our students. And as we are doing now, whole school activities, bowling again, hopefully. No gutters. But we have also today, we did another activity with our Sources, sticky notes of gratitude and kindness that we put up around in the bathrooms and in the building, just to, to brighten up that day. So that is our Sources, and thank you for your time.
Hang up there for just a second. Does anyone have any questions for our lovely folks from Community High School?
Quick one.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Monty.
Oh, no questions. Just a thank you for coming in and hearing about Sources. And Milo, it's always wonderful to see you, and you did a great job. Mm-hmm. And thank you guys for everything you're doing. It's a lovely, I know that Community is a fabulous school. We've had the opportunity to work with Terry as well, and I can't say enough about it. So thank you very, very much for coming in. Thank you.
Dave?
I'll just echo that thank you and appreciation for the hard and important work that you're all doing. Just a question, and I understand if the answer is no, but would it ever be possible for us to get a glimpse at the videos that were submitted, just as another way for us, a little window for us to see what's being created and what's being shared? So it doesn't have to be now or soon, but just a request.
Yes.
Any other questions? Thank you so much for coming today. Appreciate you. We're now at the portion of our agenda where audience members can stay, or we will give you a second to shuffle out.
Why would they want to leave?
She said that was pursued.
Okay, we are moving on to the approval of minutes, and just as a reminder from the last meeting, I will take an official roll of each of the votes, unless I don't. Like the approval of the agenda is a procedural vote, so that's assumed. But moving on, we'll take a roll of the vote. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes from January 22nd? Motion by Dr. Shab. Is there a second? Second by Joel. We will now take a roll call vote.
Gockler? Yes. Larson?
Yes.
Manley is absent. Lunn?
Yes.
Palmasino?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Shab?
Yes.
And Flynn?
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no, 1 absent.
Thank you. We're now on to the item of public comments. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak that's not on the agenda? Okay. Moving on to superintendent's recommendations for discussion. First, we have the public forum planning. Dr. Brenner.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm on page 12 of your electronic packet. That's the cover memo that discusses the draft updates for the public forum booklets. I'm going to go right to the second paragraph. At tonight's meeting, I'm going to walk you through booklet number 1 from a fairly high level, then go into a bit more detail regarding booklet number 2, which is where we'll seek input from participants who will participate that evening on March 25th, which is the date that we will have the public forum at South Middle School. And once we conclude the public forum at South Middle School, then we'll have lots of information from the people who participate, how they responded to the questions. Cindy will begin collating themes of that evening, and then we will report that out to you and the rest of the community as well. So why don't we start on page 15 in booklet number 1, page 15 of the electronic packet, that is. And I just want to call your attention to the Century Code that's been adjusted since we did this last time, where they've actually added academic achievement as one of the pieces to discuss, if we want to discuss that. And you'll see that our questions at the end of booklet number 2 really focus more about boundary lines and programs, and if we want to have further consideration of that. So I'm just going to continue to take you through it again at a high level. If you want to go to electronic page 18, please, of your electronic packet. It talks about elementary schools, small schools ranging from 150 to 500 students, small class sizes in K through 3. And I think that's important to note as we get into the conversation that we'll have with our public who attend the public forum. Next, I would draw your attention to electronic page 19, the graphic that discusses enrollment history and projections. And you'll see that over the course of the next 3 years, we really see flat growth. Demographers projecting 18 students in total that would grow pre-K through grade 12. Certainly that can be adjusted based on some factors that we may not know about. We know that we have, what's not accounted for in that graphic would be our new American population, that we're seeing more and more people come to our community, whether it's through business, whether it's through Global Friends or some other entity, that number could change, and we hope it does change. If you would keep turning your page, please, to electronic page 21. These have all been updated since our last public forum. You'll see a blue and white graphic relative to our curriculum adoption process. Chief Academic Officer Amy Barch has done a terrific job of keeping her eye on the prize and making sure that we have curriculum in front of you each and every year for adoption. You'll probably recall when I was in that role that 7 out of the 10 years we were not able to advance anything because of budget constraints. So we certainly have made that a priority. On page 22, you will notice in the second paragraph, I think you've probably caught wind that our EL program has changed to contemporary language of ML, multilingual learners. So we're all still getting accustomed to saying ML instead of EL. And we have some updated pieces like multi-tiered support system and some of the other pieces that would be new from last time, like example, Mentor Center. And then our work around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging that we started in the last couple of years. If you would please continue to turn your page to page 25, you will see that Brandon has updated everything from a budget revenue perspective, from where the sources of the revenue come from, federal sources, local, et cetera. All of that is updated as well. So I won't spend any time on that because you see plenty of that during financial updates. If you'd please go to page electronic 31. One thing that I would like to call out is we've been pretty proud as a school district to say that our portion of the pie for the local taxing entities is smaller than all of the other large school districts. So of the pie, 38% in Grand Forks goes to the school district. You'll see in Fargo it's 53%, West Fargo 45%, Bismarck 41%. However, we've ticked up a little bit, and now we are even with Minot. But we also call Minot our sister city because their enrollment is basically the same. They have the Air Force Base, a lot of similar demographics to us. But because of our referendum, because of our building fund 10 mil increase, that's changed that piece of the pie that's gone up from what used to be in about that 33, 34% to 38%. If I could draw your attention to electronic page 36, you will see Jonathan Elwine's facilities maintenance overview that he presented to all of you. So that'll be a nice feature to have in this booklet for our participants. So they'll see how the work is being amortized out over the next 6 years. So with that, I'm ready to go into booklet number 2, unless there are any questions about booklet number 1.
Go ahead.
We were just talking a little before the meeting. The projects completed 2022 to present, is that the only ones, or it just seems like such a short list from what I'm used to hearing about?
Yeah, we would have to go back to when COVID money started coming in. Yeah, but to your point, yes, we've done a lot more than that. So we'll back that up a couple of years. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh, for pointing that out.
The other thing on that, should we put the amount with those projects? Because I think people, they look at, Ben Franklin interior remodeling. Nobody realizes that we're putting $4 million into the school. So I think the amount would show them where our money is going.
Thank you for that feedback. Yes.
Anything else on booklet 1?
Just a general question. I know this is in draft form. Can we submit minor changes that we notice at a different time, not to spend time here? Is there a timeline for completion of the publication?
Yeah, within the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you. Okay. All right. Booklet number 2. This is the participants booklet. And again, what I didn't say up front was, when we meet on the 25th, we'll provide a 20 to 30 minute overview in the cafetorium, so all participants will be in there. We'll provide an overview of everything, on a skinny level, of what was in booklet number 1, assuming that the participants did a little bit of homework before they got there. but we do want to add some detail because we know it'll help drive the conversation. So what they'll get in their thinner book for the participants that night would be the strategic planning summary sheet, what our purpose is, our vision, values. You can see what looks pretty familiar to you because if you're completing my evaluation right now, you're seeing academics, comprehensive mental health system, and resource management, long-term planning. You can see that on the bottom of the first page, and also that's the full second page, which would be electronic page 40. So it talks about the challenges where we're at today, and some of the, we want to give them enough information that's going to help them respond to the questions when we get to the questions. So if you would then please go to 41, electronic page 41, we want to explain to the community why we actually do this. And Board President Flynn, Vice President Berger, and I have spent a couple of meetings, maybe even 3 meetings, talking about the process that we use, which goes above and beyond what the state requires. Most school boards accomplish this at a regular school board meeting. They might lay out some information similar to this and ask for public comments. Sometimes they get public comments, sometimes they don't. And we just have believed that we'll be fully transparent. We'll invite approximately 250 people. That doesn't mean all of them will show up, even though they commit to it. But nonetheless, it gives them, some time and space to respond to the questions. On the next page, you'll see the guiding change document. That's electronic page 42. We want to make sure the public sees that while this looks like a fairly skinny document for people who look at this at first glance, they don't know and understand that all of you put in approximately 8 hours to develop those 3 columns of information and how we're going to get our ending fund balance to 15% by 2026. Then we get to the final page, the small group input, and we really want to get a sense of how our community is feeling about our programs that are magnet programs. And I think all of you know that, we push our ML students to elementary schools such as Winship, which used to be our primary ML school. Then we expanded to Century, and recently we've expanded to Lake Agassiz Elementary. And oh, by the way, Discovery should be listed there as well, but I had missed that in this draft format. And so the question is, do we want ML students to continue to go to their magnet schools, or is there an appetite to open this up and have them go to their neighborhood schools, much like we'd want all of our students to go to their neighborhood schools? And then the follow-up question is why or why not? And then we also want to ask if this is an appropriate time to convene another demographic task force. It's been since 2011. Matt Bakke, I'm looking at you. Was it 2011 when we had our demographic task force?
2012.
2012, I was off by a year. And Mr. Bakke actually served on that as a UND student, correct? Correct. So look where you're at today. Congratulations. So the second question is, should we reconvene a demographic task force to re-examine the present boundary lines that would address some schools' declining enrollment while other schools are near or at capacity? Why or why not? And we thought it was maybe too early to talk about whether or not we should be thinking about building something new on the south end. So as you look at the heat map that all of you are familiar with, Rob Schwartz from who's our demographer, continues to provide these for us. And what it helps with is it demonstrates to the public where our people are and where our buildings are. The data, however, doesn't trump emotion, and so we just have to work through that. And so the people who go to the ballot, let's just harken back to 2021, June, when we were talking about a K-8 Valley Middle School consolidating to North End elementary schools. The people who went to the polls said, no, that's not what we want. So we came back with a different plan. We respected what they said, and we have a 6 through 8 Valley Middle School. But now we still have the push and pull with where the people are. So I would be open at this point if you have some input or feedback, or are there questions we should be asking from a board perspective that you would like more information on from our public.
Thoughts or feedback? Go ahead, Dr. Lund.
Well, just a question, and I probably should have brought this up with packet 1. It's not a suggestion, it's just a question, is we always talk about brick and mortars, but 81% of our budget is people, and I think we made a huge investment in our people the last time around, and I don't know if you put that in a graph somewhere. I don't think any of us are satisfied. I think we'd still like to pay them more, but I think that was one of the emphasis for the last time around was we're investing in our people. And, you know, to be honest, when you talk to parents, yeah, they talk about the buildings, but they really talk about their teachers and the lunch lady and the secretaries and all the other people. So I don't know if there's a way of showing that somehow, but it's just a question more than anything.
Yes, and actually Brandon has worked on a really good graphic that illustrates that very piece, so we could add that as well. You know, the other thing I should mention is last time we asked 4 questions, and I won't remember all 4 off the top of my head, but 2 of them that we did ask was about a new Valley Middle School, and the answer was from the public, yes, do it. And the second question was investing in our current facilities, and we have done that through the referendum. So I think that's nice to hang our hat on, that we did listen to the public, and we got a referendum across the finish line, and we're doing what the public asked us to do with our resources.
Go ahead.
So my concern with the questions is that they're too narrow. I just don't know how many, at least question number 1 in my view is narrow. I don't know how many people really have a grasp of magnet schools, the multilingual students attending these schools, except for the parents who have children in those schools. I'm thinking back to the years of centuries pushback to having to being a magnet school. And I was on the board at that time, as well as Dr. Lunn and Bill Tomasino. And, you know, that's why Winship came to be. So maybe parents do know how it's worked now, but I don't have a sense of that. And so to me, that's a very narrow question. I don't really have anything outstanding in this concern, but I do have a concern for the parents who have children in the schools that won't probably be attending because they don't have transportation, and I doubt if you're providing Spanish or Somali or, you know, interpreters to have something like this. So there's a big concern for me as a pretty loud voice. I think the district hears from me a lot, especially about transportation. So I just want them to have some voice at the table. You know, I won't be on the board next year or forever, and I need to make sure that there is that voice. And we have a whole new population. Dr. Brenner, you mentioned enrollment. I think it's not just Global Friends resettling families, but it's just families coming here through, like you said, businesses or just finding Grand Forks. So I don't know if the general population, because I don't hang out as much with the general population, really is all that aware. But I think that there's concerns for these families that we want to make sure they get a voice. Unless you're going to be providing transportation, I don't think I can get volunteers to get people here that night and be a board member as well.
Go ahead.
I'll echo Cynthia's comments somewhat, although I think whatever comes out of this public hearing doesn't necessarily mean it's the final word, and we may very well have to have more in-depth conversations with some of those families that occur in their schools or elsewhere. I think there's always, if we don't get good representation, we can always reach out for more information, more feedback. I don't think this is necessarily a one and done kind of thing. I think back of, you know, Valley Middle School. Yeah, we had it the last time we did this, but we've done it several times. It wasn't a one and done kind of thing. We did it several times and had several meetings. So I think if we don't feel we've heard from the stakeholders enough, then I think it would be our duty to reach out to those stakeholders that we didn't think we heard from and get some feedback from them.
Yeah, my feedback was simply going to be, I think ahead of this, we can maybe advertise in a few ways or consider advertising in ways that we haven't before, and how do we really cast that net to allow people to plan to attend. But similar to maybe Cynthia's point, I was going to ask if there's childcare provided, if our Encore staff members were able to be on site to maybe have some activities or something, because I think that that's a huge population, and during a time where maybe families are just finishing dinner and stuff like that. But I think it would be nice if we were able to provide childcare too. Go ahead.
I agree with all of that, you guys. I think the more barriers we can remove to provide transportation or to provide access to the meeting is a really good idea. And I don't know, I think to Cynthia's point of, I think sometimes as a parent you get so consumed by your own children's activities and the lane that they're in, if they're involved in wrestling, or if they're involved in music, or whatever they're involved in at school, you know those things, but I don't know much about the football program or about how that works with my student or whatever, that kind of thing. So I think it is important to try to get a cross-section of people. So I don't know that, I think there's a lot of things that are surrounding the school system that people just don't know because you're so involved in trying to parent your own children. It's really hard to understand what's going on in some other area or aspect of the school district. So I think that's a point well taken.
Go ahead.
Dr. Brenner, was there going to be some conversation by you or other district personnel before the breakout sessions, kind of an education? I mean, that's a lot of times that's what we've done before is people don't know all that stuff, but we try and educate them before you break into the small groups. I don't know about your groups, but my groups have always been family friendly. I think almost every meeting I've been to, somebody's brought their children with. So I mean, there's nothing against them. Bring it to the small group session, at least mine.
Go ahead.
So in looking at the document number 1, is the demographic information provided about the numbers of refugee students, the number of, I know you break it down into more than just refugee students, or immigrants in general. I don't recall that.
I'm sorry, what page are you on, Dr. Schaap?
I don't know if it's in here.
Oh.
Is there demographic information about the makeup of the student population to even help community members have a feeling for how many are really here? And I think I would be remiss to say that, not everybody's on board, and I think we are all aware of that. That pushback right now that's happening nationwide, not just, Dr. Lunn is in the circle over at Spectra Health, and so, yeah, we're on board, but there are people that aren't. But so if you show numbers, I think it helps.
Thank you.
I think the challenge I have with question number 1 is we're asking for the public's opinion on what I perceive as a strategic, academic focused population. And I don't know that the general public has an understanding of ML needs or resources or teaching, how to teach. And so I feel like we'd maybe be asking an opinion of an uninformed general group when, I think we have the resources in our district to utilize expertise available and make that decision. I think number 1 just feels very much like there's probably just so much more information that we would need rather than seeking input from general public on that one.
Would you just like to stick with boundary lines and having discussions about boundary lines? Or is there a question or questions that you'd like to see us ask the public?
I know in the past probably 5 years, I get that question more than a handful of times. What's the school district building on the south end? What's, I hope they don't change it. I can walk to my school. I feel like there's always, my school seems like it has more than this other school. There just seems to be a lot of conversation and opinion about boundary lines. And I think it's a good dialogue both to educate and learn. And it's been a long time, and when you haven't done something or had a conversation about something for 10, 12 years, I think naturally it's a good timeline to have that, and I think we'd probably get a variety of different opinions and feedback on that one question alone. Other feedback?
To that point, is there other information that would help, aside from the heat maps, guide an informed conversation around boundary lines that might not be present in this cabinet? And you haven't had a chance to go through the packet, but that's one of the things. Is there more information? Because we provide a lot of multiple data points with the facilities information, and I think it's the heat map is the primary source of data for the secondary conversation. So just think about that.
Go ahead, Joel.
How many parents are requesting a transfer or a change of their district? I'd be interested in that. I mean, if it's 3 and everybody else is happy with their home school, then it's probably nothing. But if there's a big number of parents that want to do something other than what they're assigned to, I think that would be interesting.
Is it okay if I respond? Mm-hmm. Okay. Actually, Mr. Bakke has been looking at that. He probably has some numbers right off the top of his head, but there's an explanation behind the large number.
So I can speak to the elementary level to a certain degree. We actually have 508 in-district transfers across our district as it relates to elementary. A number of those are for various reasons. It can be program placed, so if there's students that are on specific programs that they are placed at a building to receive the services that are provided through, it may be special education services, or as Board Member Shab has indicated, it may be for ML programming as well. And so there are various stories behind why each one of those happened, but at the elementary level right now we have 508 in-district transfers. Again, for various reasons. One of those would be program placed. Some are specific to incident or situations that they have, as well as due to class sizes and things like that as well, too. So.
Go ahead, Joel.
One more. Of the 508, are they routinely granted that these are reasonable requests, or are these something that we scrutinize and reject? Like, what's the kind of the stats on that?
As far as an elementary setting, again, that's what I can speak to at this point, and Ms. Glatch can speak to the secondary level. Each one of them is individually taken under consideration based on their individual situation or based on their program need as it relates to their individual student, so, and family situation. Now, one thing I will say is that some of these some of the 508 also relates back to the closing of West, and some of those being placed within the neighborhood school that they were not assigned to at the very beginning when West closed, and so some of those are also part of that factor as well too, in that 508.
I think in general, all of that would be helpful though to have as part of the conversation, because I wouldn't have guessed it was that large just in elementary. So, Melissa, did you have something?
Can I just give you one more point of information for that? 232 of those are program placed. So almost half of it is program placed based on individual needs. So just so you're aware of that.
Go ahead.
When it comes to we can look at enrollment reports of the schools, but you don't really know, is that large for the building or not? So if you're going to talk boundary lines, maybe somehow have information on which schools are at capacity, over capacity, because that would affect whether a parent thinks their boundary line should shift.
Yeah, I was going to say too, I think it'd be important to have, what schools have one section versus two, or what are programmatic schools that are filled up, not because of butts in the seats, but because of the program needs and things like that. So I think that would be helpful. I also know that a part of the demographic conversation last time was, I think people just assume, well, like, you can't cross Demers and you can't cross Columbia and Washington, and like there's these, grid system of our schools. And so certainly there's a safety component involved, and, Safe Kids helping to identify what's some walking distance and safe ways to cross. But I think some of the history definitely helps as to why things were decided this way at this time, and then where things at now based on, just the growth of our city, infrastructure changes, things like that, busings, et cetera. Other thoughts on, go ahead.
So just one thought in reading that question number one more time here. You're just talking about elementary. You haven't mentioned that it's South for South Middle School, and that now Central and Red River are, I don't know if you're calling them magnet schools, because they both are filled with ML students. So that's a very targeted, I think that's the challenge. That's one more challenge with it. It's just so targeted to elementary there. The other thing about demographics, which I'm thinking about, they've graduated now, but when the boundaries occurred, I was on the board, and it's 13th is the dividing line. And so the kids across from 13th Avenue South, there was a family that lived right on the corner. And all they would have had to do was walk across the street, down the walking path, and cross 17th Avenue. But they were zoned for Central. And so, I know that that's just one example, but there's a lot of homes in that little area there. And I know that's hard to draw the line, but I don't know how we make those, like, they didn't get an exception. I don't know how you get an exception, how you don't get an exception. So parents probably don't know how you get an exception either. That's just more general.
So I'm hearing broaden this to middle and high school, the whole boundary line conversation. Okay.
I think any question that we ask has to be our full population of students that attend. Certainly. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Lund.
Well, if we're going to talk about boundaries and small neighborhood schools, then we have to address small neighborhood schools. And Doug Carpenter used to famously say, if you want to have small neighborhood schools in the elementary, we need to add about 10 more, because we've got some and people, depends on what they think is a neighborhood school. Some people think it's got to be 4 blocks. Other people think it doesn't matter. My kids, granted they're in their 30s, their neighborhood school was 1.5 miles away. Now, granted, they did walk there on good days, but the definition of a neighborhood school, and I'd be curious, and I don't know if I know Safe Kids has looked at it at some point, but how many kids actually do walk to school versus how many are driven to school or bus to school? And I don't know if we have any of that data, but it's a lot less than the public thinks when they think about that. And if you're talking about changing boundary lines and wanting to have neighborhood schools, I don't think we have a good definition of what a neighborhood school is right now, and we'd probably have 40,000 opinions if we asked the public about it. So it's a lot more complex than it seems. So
go ahead.
When we had the referendum, wasn't one of the conversations as to when we are going to, like, it's not off the table that there's a potential for a South End school, and because I just remember lots of conversation coming to me about that same point. They're driving over to Discovery, I don't know how many miles.
3.5.
At least 3.5. And that's called a neighborhood school, but it's not. So, like, that was in the discussion with Winship and Wilder, where they, need that 4-block radius. And so I do think that we had it kind of planned to talk about, so why not talk about it again?
There were a couple of questions out of the 18 or 19 questions, the pre-referendum survey questions at 1,200 people filled out in the community. And one of them was, in 5 years, would you support a new South End elementary school? And let's just call it at Palmasino Park, because we all know where that is. And the response was lukewarm, actually cool. Another question was, would you support an addition or a new build on an existing site on the north end for an elementary school? And the response was much more favorable for that one. But again, it's where the people are and where the buildings are. That's what we have to reconcile.
Go ahead.
Just to add more mud, as the population migrates this direction, we have two main high school campuses, one very much on the north end and one more centrally located. And so if you extrapolate out those buildings and where the lines draw and how those lines could create inequities in enrollment, and enrollment drives programming, and we want equitable programming at campuses, it's a pretty complex equation. So, I just wanted to, a lot of times we think about the littles in the neighborhood schools, but we have to think about the end of their experience in our district as well.
Okay, any more? Okay. Dr. Brenner has a whole page full of notes. So we'll, thank you for looking through this. And just as a reminder, if you have any more thoughts as you kind of percolate on questions, or maybe take a second look through the packet, we have about 2 weeks. So if you have any more feedback, please send them to Dr. Brenner. Go ahead.
Just one technical thing. Do we want to say anything about air conditioning at Wilder? I mean, I know there were window units, but I didn't see that on that. It's booklet number 1.
We'll add that. They're not window units, but they're in the classroom. But yeah, we have them. Yes, we'll update that. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to the school board election process timeline. Brandon?
Board Member Flynn, members of the board. It's an even year, and that means that we have an election this year. This year, is noted in the memo on electronic page 45, there are 4 members of the school board that expire this year. They include Jeff Manley, Amber Flynn, Eric Lunn, and Cynthia Schab. In the memo, it articulates that North Dakota Century Code stipulates a process on how we just do that. You should note here that you have approved a joint powers agreement for election services with the Grand Forks County. That was on earlier in January 2024, and so we'll participate in the June 11th date for the statewide election cycle, and the county will administer that. This memo is meant to highlight a couple of very important dates for any prospective school board candidates. March 9th marks an important date of when we as a school district need to publish deadlines. But really, April 8th, 2024 is the deadline for candidates to file electronic forms to myself within the school district. There's a deadline of 4 p.m. on April 8th. Attached to the memo itself is the candidate filing form, statement of interest, and campaign disclosure statement, which is new. But those are the requirements to be completed and submitted to myself by 4 p.m. on April 8th. And then right at that time, too, is with all those completed applications, we'll draw for the order that will be placed on the ballot itself. And then finally, the last date of note then from that point forward would be June 11th, the actual election date. So this is just an update to you and the public about the process here. There's a couple of links, or 3 links, and attached paperwork for reference.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Okay, we'll now move on to our consent agenda. I'll have a motion for approval. Motion by Bill. Is there a second? Second by Monty, and we will take a roll call vote.
Yes.
Stockford? Yes. Anderson?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
Palmasino?
Yes.
Schaaf? Yes. Norman is absent. Anthony King?
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no, 1 absent.
Okay, motion is approved. We'll now move on to the agreement between districts committee report. A couple of us met to go over this report. There were a few changes as indicated by the underlined green text. A majority of the changes were dates and then the school board president. Otherwise, there were no significant changes. The recommendation from the committee is to approve the joint powers agreement. Do I have a motion for approval? Motion by Dr. Lunn. Is there a second? Second by Dr. Shab. And we'll take a roll call vote.
Gockler? Yes. Excuse me. Palmasino?
Yes.
Shab?
Yes.
Lunn?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
And Flynn?
Yes.
And Manley is absent. 8 yes, 0 no, 1 absent.
And that motion carries. Thank you. We'll now move on to item C of the superintendent's recommendations for action and D. So I'll give a little bit of a process procedural breakdown, and then we'll move into those items. Items C and D are related to level 4 grievance by Mr. Steve Paintner, and item D is a level 4 grievance by Mr. Tim Tandeschi, both teachers in our school district. Before I hand it over to Dr. Brenner, Dr. Brenner will introduce the memo, and because the grievances are very much in concert with one another. Usually we would take it separate grievance, go through the process and vote. Then we take the separate grievance, go through the process and vote. But given both of these are on the same topic, we'll let Mr. Steve Paintner speak first and Mr. Tim Tandeschi. If you could keep it maybe less than 10 minutes, we'll hear what both of them have to say, and then we'll decide on the grievance after that. Does anyone have any procedural questions or comments before Dr. Brenner introduces the memo? Go ahead, Dr. Lynn.
I'm assuming we should have two different votes at the end of the time.
Yes, yep, we'll have two different votes. None of the grievance will be in executive session, so we will discuss openly with the board after hearing Mr. Paintner, Mr. Tandeschi's request, and then we'll take a public vote as well. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Brenner.
Thank you, Amber. I'm on page 66 of the electronic packet, and the first memo relates to Steve Paintner and his level 4 grievance. Grand Forks Central High School teacher Steve Paintner has gone through the grievance steps relative to challenging the language and subsequent decisions made regarding the 2023 through 25 teacher negotiated agreement. The history behind this: during the 2023 negotiations between the Grand Forks Education Association, otherwise known as GFEA, and the school board, GFEA proposed a career increment on step 26 and step 35 at $1,000 and $2,000 respectively. GFEA's language was clear: step, not experience. Somewhere between the school board's counter proposal and the final ratified teacher negotiated agreement, step was changed by a clerical error. Thus, at least 2 teachers have grieved that they should be entitled to the $2,000 career increment based on their experience in the district rather than step. To date, no teacher has received the $2,000 increment. As superintendent, this was brought to my attention at the onset of the school year. I immediately staffed the conversation with GFEA President Melissa Bukup, and her understanding of the intent, as brought to the negotiating table by GFEA, was the career increment was based on step, not experience. Further, President Bukup shared with me that North Dakota United stood by her perspective as well. Given that, we have proceeded with the understanding that step was the language intent, yet concede that experience was a clerical error in the final document. Mr. Paintner followed the procedural grievance steps where he met with his building level principal. Following the grievance denials at the earlier levels, the grievance from Mr. Paintner was appealed to me. Mr. Paintner and I had a meeting on Wednesday, January 31st, where I listened to his concerns and rationale for his appeal. The conclusion of that conversation Subsequently, and through conversations with District Legal Counsel, Laura Cobb, and her review of negotiations information provided by the district, it was recommended to deny the request based on her legal opinion. Thus, my determination to Mr. Paintner on Tuesday, February 7th, 2024, was to deny his request. And you can see my letter that's enclosed in the packet, and also Attorney Laura Cobb's letter. It's now up to the school board to hear Mr. Paintner's appeal at your level.
Mr. Painter. If you could just hit the yellow button when you get up there.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Good evening, school board. My name is Steve Paintner. I teach mathematics at Central High School. I have now taught 34 years, so when I finish, I will be 35 years into this occupation. First of all, I want to say thank you for letting me speak to you tonight. I also want to say thank you for the countless hours you spent in negotiation. I sat here, I listened, I watched. Our teaching negotiating team did a great job. You guys did a wonderful job. It was very appreciated, is what I'm trying to say. My level, excuse me, my reason for my level 4 grievance is I believe teachers in their 35th experience year or more of teaching should have received an additional $1,000 in their contract starting this year. Why do I believe this? Well, as stated in the negotiated agreement, starting in the year 23-24 school year, a career increment will be added to each teacher's salary for teaching in the district beyond the 25th step of the salary schedule. The career increment will be $1,000 for experience years 26 to 34. That's exactly where I'm at, 34. I did receive the $1,000 increment. Then it says, as well as an additional career increment of $2,000 for experience year 35 and beyond. 34, 35, that's the way I go. I mean, that's the way I count. I believe I would be up for next year's increment, the way this reads. Now, I understand that both parties, school board and teacher negotiation team, both parties made a mistake on the word step versus experience. But this is not the way it read. It didn't read this way in May. June, I didn't know anything about this until I got back to school. Started seeing contracts coming out now on my contract. It says I'm on step 31. I will explain the whole step 31 to you in just a little bit. My hope after I finish here with this discussion is you, the school board, will revisit this topic with the teacher negotiation team and make it right, if that can be done. The reason I'm here is mainly to show the inequity of this agreement. I do want to say thank you for the longevity increment, because the first $1,000 after the 25th step was received by all teachers that reached that plateau. And many received it. I just talked to Griffin Gillespie, our HR director, just a couple days ago, and he did say many got it, and I believe him. Then I asked the second question, because this was what I was more concerned about. What about the $1,000, the second increment? How many received that one? His answer to me was nobody. And how many 35 plus years of experienced teachers do we have in this district? He told me 10 to 15, and when he said 15, I was one of the 15, and I wasn't even that yet, because I'm not there. I got to finish my year. Mr. Tandeschi behind me, same thing. He has to finish. So it's not even, I don't even think it's 15. I don't think we're talking about a lot of teachers who should get this second increment. And I just don't understand how this could have been the intention for nobody to get a longevity experience. It just doesn't make sense to me. If you're going to say longevity, it's thank you for putting in the years and thank you for returning. All right, so why did this all happen? Well, it's this word steps. Using the word steps is so confusing because of many things. If you go back, I don't even know the correct number, but I'd say 10, 12, 15 years ago, in a negotiation agreement, we condensed our scale, our pay scale, from 33 years down to 25 years. And what happened is the further you were in that pay scale, the 33 years, if you were close to the end, well, you weren't at the end. So when 25 came, you weren't going to get that 25 steps. You weren't quite there, so they backed you up. And the closer you were to that 25th step, the further back they pushed you. Now, I was pushed back 3 years, so I think I remember it being my 20th year, so I was on the 20th step, and they said, no, you're going to make too much money. That can't be right. So they pushed me back. And at that point, I still got a fairly good raise. I was happy. I agreed, and I signed my contract. So there it is. I went from 20th step back to 17. Okay, well, the pay scale was now down to 25, so I was going to get there in 8 years versus 10, 11, 12 years. It seemed like a very good motion. So I signed it and didn't think anything of it, of course, until now. Now, the farther away you were from the top, so let's say you were, I don't know, 12, 13, 14, 15 years. You weren't close to the top. So they didn't push you back. Those teachers were on their 15th year. They're on the 15th step. They're exactly where they should be. 15 years, 15 steps. I'm in my 34th, going fifth year. I'm on step 31. Well, I mean, obviously that's going to push me back, and it's going to make me work longer to get the second increment. The problem with this right now is you have a lot of teachers that are on step 30 to 35, but they're on their 35th, 6th, 7th, 8th year of teaching. And we're telling them, you need to wait. You need to wait another 3-4 years. So when you get to your 39th year, for myself, 39th, then the second increment of 1,000 will come. To show you just a little bit how unfair this is, I teach with a lady in Central. She's got 2 more years experience than me. She's now completing she'll be completing her 37th year. She's on step 31 with me. She's going to wait 4 more years, so she'll get that second increment on her 41st year. By the time we get there, I'll be 62, she'll be 64. You can't expect teachers to keep going. I mean, I enjoy what I do. I want to come back. But at that time, you get to your 60s, you're kind of like, that's enough. I've had enough. Right now, I still enjoy it. I still love what I do. But I think what this is doing is it's creating problems, and teacher morale at that level of experience, people talk. It's just nothing that we feel like we're really appreciated. I know the gesture is there, but I don't quite see it. All right. So what's the solution? Well, Mr. Tandeschi and I, we met with Melissa back in, must have been October. We talked and went back and forth, had good conversation, and Melissa said, well, we will negotiate again in 25 to 27. And yeah, that's an okay argument, but I just feel like you can't ask those teachers that have 37, 38, 39 years, wait 2 more years, then when that comes, then you'll have 3 more years to get this increment, because where I'm going with this is retirement. So if this raise was given this year, these teachers that are in their 37th, 38th, 39th year, obviously, 1 more, if they got it this year, $1,000. Next year, $1,000. So that's $2,000 added to their salary. But each $1,000 they get equates to about $5,000 in retirement. So each $1,000, if you're talking 2 years, we're talking $10,000 in retirement. That's not money out of the school district. That's just TFFR. I'm talking $2,000, but you're taking $10,000 in retirement out of these pockets. These teachers can't. I mean, they're already 60, 61, 62. You're asking them to wait 2 more years and then teach 3 more years. I just don't think that's fair. So, after being denied on my third level grievance, I was also sent a letter from the district lawyer, Laura Cobbs, and I read it, and it's very legal jargon in which I have a hard time understanding, but at the very end, I read it and I went, you know what, I like what she said here, because her argument was this: when both parties agree on a mistake, such as steps versus experience, the contract holds true. It's a binding contract. Both parties made a mistake on steps versus experience. But my argument is this. My argument is that both parties could and should agree that the word steps wasn't intended to hurt the most experienced teachers, although it did hurt them mostly because of the inequity of how a teacher's contract reads. Steps are not fair. They just aren't. So, if the word step was intended, as Laura Cobbs stated, and both groups agree that this just isn't right, then let's do something to fix it. And that's what my hope is tonight. Why should we fix it? Well, realize what this word longevity means. I think it means this: to reward those that have been loyal and dedicated, and also it's a true thank you. If you're going to say increment for teaching for whatever years you claim, then follow through with it. Another question you might have, and I know you're probably going to have, is how can we afford this now? We're already tapped out. Well, first I want you to realize how this is me now, how I believe this is such a small piece. We're talking 15 to 20 teachers. This is what Mr. Gillespie told me. And you might say, well, it's $1,000, but it isn't 1,000 on top of 1,000. It's just 10, 15,000 for those teachers. And if you go back 2 years ago, we threw out this buyout program. And this buyout program, which, another story, this buyout program paid teachers lots of money. One teacher made a lot of money. I'm talking, this program is a $15,000 you could add to these teachers. Now remember, I'm not even one of them. I'm not there yet. I hope to be there next year. But I just don't feel like these teachers that are there should really get it taken away. They can't just be pushed back further. To get this second increment when you're 15 years, they're going to be 15 years past the 25th step. All right, and last reason would probably be it's great for teacher morale. I think it would be great if you guys would discuss it, take it seriously, please. Think about it, and that's about it, okay? Just thanks for listening to me tonight, and please consider our request. Thank you.
Mr. Peatner, if you want to stand there for questions, but
yeah, sure.
If you would give me just 1 second.
Did I not include it?
Do you have his grievance letter with his name on it? Because we have in this case.
I'm just trying to figure out a minor paperwork
no, that's fine.
document.
Behind the attorney on both of them. Are they both Sandusky?
Yeah, this one.
And the next one? Behind there. There, okay. Oh, I've got it here. Right there. Do you want me to go print them quick?
That's okay for now. Yeah. We just needed to.
Yeah.
Good catch.
Okay. Does anyone have any? So what I was asking of Dr. Brenner, in Mr. Paintner's file, the process for filing a complaint with the school board is a written letter, and there was just a misprint on page 72. It says Mr. Tandeschi in Mr. Paintner's grievance. So Mr. Paintner's grievance letter just wasn't printed. So I just wanted to make sure that that was filed. So questions for Mr. Paintner based on his conversation? Okay.
I've got it right up here if you want. Thank you. I actually have a question for Melissa. Is that all right?
Yep.
If you look at page 70, Melissa.
70?
70, yeah, sorry. I can move closer. Where, excuse me, in the document it says, if then change to, number 1, starting in the 2023-24 school year. Is that what's actually in the teacher negotiated contract this year?
No, when Mr. Tandeschi initially reached out, our negotiation team came together because anytime we had talked about this and when we explained it to members before ratifying, we explained it the way we had talked about it at the board table. So we went back looking through all of our paperwork to try to figure out when stuff came. So what's on that page is what we initially proposed to give people extra money after they hit step 25, because you don't get that bump up like you do throughout. And so I was just trying to copy and paste stuff to show them what had happened, what our process was going back and forth between GFEA and the board over those couple of sessions when we were going back and forth and we wanted something like this in the contract.
Thank you.
If there's no specific questions at this time for Mr. Paintner, then we'll ask Mr. Tandeschi to come to the microphone, and then we'll probably stand for questions during discussion as well too. So,
okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Tandeschi.
Good evening.
Before you speak, I have the same memo that I just read regarding Mr. Paintner.
You don't have to read it if you don't want to. You're good. Well, thank you for hearing us out tonight, and thank you for being here, and thank you for everything you do and representing the community at the school board. I'm going to start out the meeting with a positive. This might be the only positive you get out of me, so enjoy it. I've been blessed as a teacher through my 34, almost 35 years, to work with many outstanding and really great young people, and you guys have one of the finest students that I've ever gotten a chance to work with, sitting as your student representative on the board. She's a great student, and she's an even better person. So I'm going to read the North Dakota Century Code 9-07-02. This is from the Attorney Cobb in the memo that she wrote back to us. The language of the contract is to govern its interpretation if the language is clear and explicit and does not involve any absurdity. Ambiguity is another word you can use in place of that. It says a contract must be so interpreted as to give effect to the mutual intention of the parties at the time of the contracting, so far as the same is ascertainable and lawful. That's 9-07-03. It says when a contract is reduced to writing, the intention of the parties is to be ascertained from the writing alone, if possible, subject, however, to the provisions of this chapter. So the writing alone is pretty clear. The plain language of the contract is very clear. It says experience years. So, furthermore, when through fraud, mistake, or accident a written contract fails to express the real intention of the parties, such intention is to be regarded and the erroneous parts of the writing disregarded. I think that's what Melissa and Dr. Brenner and the school board negotiating team are arguing, is that we should disregard experience years and replace it with steps. Next one is 9-07-18. Words in a contract which are inconsistent with its nature or with the main intention of the parties are to be rejected. I think the intention was to award teachers for their service to the school district for 26 to 34 years and for 35 experience years. My question to the school board and negotiating parties, you agree that experience should be replaced with steps. Is that correct? No?
Can you ask your question again?
You're saying that experience years should be replaced with steps in the contract.
The intent of negotiations and what we agreed upon was steps.
Okay, so Attorney Cobb said that the word experience was misplaced. So it was supposed to say 35 steps, or 35 years, or 35 steps years?
Yes.
35 steps years?
Steps, not steps years.
Okay,
Steps.
yeah, because steps years doesn't really make any sense. So if the intent was to use steps instead of experience, my question would be, why weren't steps or rows 26 to 35 added to the salary schedule?
That would have been a whole nother expansion of the salary schedule. And so I believe Mr. Paintner had talked about at one point the salary schedule was condensed so that teachers would get to that higher salary quicker. And so if we expanded it, that would have not allowed the teachers at they would have been, they would have had to teach more years. They wouldn't have been at the end of the salary schedule. So it just wasn't a part of the discussions to expand the salary schedule. Rather, GFEA brought forth a proposal for those capped at the 25th step, that there would be a career increment added on steps.
Yeah, just so you're clear, I'm not a proponent and I'm not an advocate of adding 10 more rows to the salary schedule. I'm just, if the intent was to base it on steps, that's basically what you've done. You've added steps 26 to 35 to the salary schedule for us older teachers. Right now, I'm row 31, I'm column 8. I plan on teaching 2 more years after this year. I will never see this career increment, which in the contract, the written agreement in the contract, it says 35 experience years. The salary schedule has not had steps beyond 25 since 2009. 2008, 2009 was the last year where we had the 34-step salary schedule. I was in year 20, just like Mr. Paintner. I was step 19. The next negotiated agreement said you'll go back 2 years, but it said you'll go back from the beginning of your previous teaching year, which was year 19. We had step 0 when we began, so our 20th year we were on step 19. So our current salary schedule does not have steps beyond 25. So those steps are there, though. I mean, we have teachers that are at step 34. I just talked to one of them today, and she's got 43 or so years in the district, and again, she's not receiving this career increment after 43 years teaching in the school district. I received a contract on June 16th, 2023 that said I was on step 25, which that's the very last step on the salary schedule, as it should be. I think that's good for our district. I think that's good for our younger teachers. I was on the other end of that back in 1997. I was on step 8. We went out to step 20. I never moved closer to the end of the salary schedule. I stayed 15 steps away from the top of the salary schedule for 12 years. That is not what we want. That's not what I'm asking for. My contract was revised to step 31 on August 24th, 2023. I did receive the $1,000 increase for experience years 26 through 34. In Attorney Cobb's memo or document, it said the salary proposal was accepted May 23rd, 2023. My feeling is that the board and GFEA discount the plain meaning of language of the contract. The plain meaning, the plain language of the contract reads very clear. If you follow the plain language of the contract, it's clear and it makes things pretty simple. When you replace experience years with steps, it gets really messy and it gets really unfair to teachers that are over 30 years in the district. I feel like we're being penalized, or you're penalizing us for being penalized in previous years. Previous years, we've really taken some hits, this age group of teachers that we're at. If this was the first time that something like this had happened, I wouldn't be up here. This is the first time I never even knew we had a grievance policy before this year. All these documents, all these century code and stuff, this is all new to me. This is not something I desire. It's not something I enjoy. But I really did feel like I needed to stand up and be heard. And I really do appreciate you for listening to me tonight and being here and supporting the community like you guys do. That's all I have to say. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and fire away.
Any questions specific to Mr. Tandeschi? Okay. If you wouldn't mind just hanging up here, just in case if a question arises, sure. Both of you, at some point. But I'll open it up for a discussion. Go ahead, Joel.
So I think we heard about, from Mr. Paintner, 10 to 15 teachers would fall into this category. Do we feel comfortable with those numbers? I'm just curious.
I'd have to quantify that with Griffin, HR.
And it's just a, so if in a previous iteration of contract you went from 20 or 21 years to step 17, are we dealing with other folks that went from 17 to 14 and then they're in a different category and all of a sudden we just, I mean, I think we all know what those of us that were at the table negotiated, and we're pretty firm and comfortable in that, recognizing statutes, and I do my day job as a profession where I read statutes, and so I'm comfortable. I mean, I've read these ones a number of times. It's the parole evidence rule, which means if you can get something from the face of a contract, you don't need to go anywhere else. You don't need to understand intent. If you can read it, intent is irrelevant. So arguably that supports your position, right? So then it says, what do we know? Because I don't know this previous negotiation. We weren't privy to that, I don't think, in terms of that being a factor of someone with 35 years of experience at level 31. That's a relevant fact. So I think that, I mean, if we don't need to make decisions tonight, that would probably be good to do some fact finding and make sure that we do follow through on what the intent of those of us that at the negotiating table were, because this is a fact that I didn't know myself. So I would like to understand the impact of what either decision would be, how many folks this affects, and before we make any type of decisions, if we have that luxury of time.
I could answer your question on that. Like Steve was alluding to earlier, the farther up you were on the salary schedule back in 2009, the more steps you lost. So you possibly could have been like a 30-year experienced teacher and you could have lost, well, we went down to 25, so you could have lost like 7 or 8 steps. And then you got to step 25 like in 2 years after that. I believe I had 20 years, I lost the 2 but it went back to the previous year. I think once you got to about step 15, I think you might have lost 1 step.
Okay.
If I recall correctly.
Joel, Dawn was kind of our expert on the condensed. I'm trying to ask her some questions. But yeah, it was 2009 when things were condensed. I believe, and I'm trying to double check it, so we're going to have to check. I believe when they were condensed, I don't believe anybody lost money. My understanding was everyone still gained money. Everyone gained money. They just lost steps because they condensed it so everybody could get to that higher salary faster. So yes, she said everyone gained money with the condensed salary.
Go ahead, Dr. Lund.
Just a quick question. According to our policy, if we defer tonight, we have to decide within I think it's 10 days. So we would have to have a special meeting just so we're, at least the way I read the policy, it would not coincide with our next regular meeting, so we'd have to have a special meeting. You know, there's only a few of us left in this room that were around here in 2009, and I think Melissa and other people have talked about, but the reason for condensing that was to get higher earnings quicker so that because the catchphrase back then with the teachers was career earnings, and it was you get higher career earnings because you get a higher salary early on. And of course, I don't know why we would want to relitigate something that happened 15 years ago. It was accepted back then, and so I'm not sure how much that pertains to us. I don't ever remember talking about years' experience. It's always been steps. Whenever I've heard about this, and I don't get that it's wrong, and I certainly appreciate the work that Mr. Painter and Mr. Tandeschi have done through the years, but that's not been what we've talked about at negotiating tables year in, year out. It's always been steps. It hasn't been experience, years experience or things like that. So but what was done back in 2008, 2009, I think was done, and it was accepted by those bargaining groups, and to me that's a done deal.
Yeah, just a point of clarification. So the policy 4120 in the grievance 4 section reads that within 10 days after the meeting, the school board shall issue its decision in writing to the parties involved. So days on section 2 of the policy refers to days in the time periods of this procedure and shall refer to working days. A working day is defined as any weekday not designated as a holiday by state law. So because we have President's Day in that, the next Monday meeting would technically be day 9. So we could delay a decision if we felt comfortable enough to meet and decide and then issue the opinion the next day, or we could decide today, or we could decide in a special meeting between that time, just for question of the policy. I also, you know, having been on the negotiating team for a number of years, I think this was my 4th time. There's frequently items that we'll negotiate with the GFEA, and sometimes whatever's negotiated, maybe how we thought it would be rolled out is different than maybe what we assumed it would be like, or some of the language we thought would clean up some things, and then the next negotiation session we're like, oh, well, we should update this or change it. And so while I had some history of you know, the condensing of the schedule, and now even today there's some questions about maybe some little intricacies. I think that always informs how we do our jobs in terms of enforcing policy and setting the contract, but I think that it helps to inform future negotiation sessions and potentially clean up any language. So that's sort of how we've always handled any maybe questions that come up in the interim. So I just wanted to give an update on 4120 and kind of just the negotiation sessions. I had 2 questions. The first question is, because our salary schedule is capped at 25, Mr. Painter said this, I believe, and then as it's written, if you're at 25 on the salary schedule, what or how is it being referred to as you're at step 31 technically? Is that like in the back end for some TFFR thing? Like, what is that?
I can tell, I asked Griffin or maybe Brandon. I think Griffin got back to me. It was something with, because I asked, some things were getting confusing, and we were asking like, how can we put this in our contracts differently? Because it was getting confusing, and they said something, it was with it, the way it had to be programmed into the system or something like that is what I was told.
Yeah, just to respond to that, I remember the conversation during negotiations that our accounting system is set for step 25. And so when this was negotiated, it immediately started the process of how do we identify those who would be above that part. And Griffin led that effort, but it's off the accounting system.
Okay. So, for example, like the rule of 85 or the rule of 90, that isn't is that what step you're at, or is that your years of teaching in the state of North Dakota?
That's your years of teaching plus your age.
Your age, yeah. Okay.
Your years of experience plus age.
Okay. And then, Mr. Paintner, you said for every $1,000, I potentially lose $5,000. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, what I did is I just took the formula for the retirement, took the extra $2,000 they made, divided by 3, $666. I took 74%, because that's about the average teacher at that point in their career, multiplied it. They came out to a certain number, and I'm assuming, this is my assumption, that they will get to enjoy 20 years of retirement, and that came out to about $10,000.
Okay, so that over the span of 20 years?
Yes, over a 20-year span. You know, so that's why I'm saying it could be 2,000 plus another 10 is what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
And it's teacher retirement money. I'm not talking district money.
Okay.
First of all, you should be an actuary, because that's fascinating to me that's a compliment, how we get to the point where we...
You just got to know that you're talking to 2 math teachers.
I know, this excites me. I'm a math nerd. But I do want to clarify one point. The district does pay a portion of TFFR for all retired teachers, so it is...
Of the $2,000 you do, right? Not in retirement.
Yes.
Of the earnings.
Yes, exactly, of the current earnings.
Yeah, but the 10,000 has nothing to do with our school district that I was talking about, I guess.
He's talking about money that would be earned
from TFFR.
Yep.
So is the career increment added to the total? Does it report? Let's say someone is making $80,000 and they have a career increment of $1,000. Does that say this teacher's salary this year is $81,000, or is it sort of coded like they make $80,000 plus they've received a bonus for $1,000? How is that recorded?
I'm sorry.
You're right. It's added in, so there's one number on your contract, so it's reflected.
Okay.
Because that was another conversation we had after the fact, after it all passed on. What is the best way for the business side of it to run it through?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Joel.
What year or when did you, maybe each of you individually, when did you reach your 25th step?
6 years ago.
6 years ago.
That's why
So after our 28th year, so our 29th year of teaching, we would have been at step 25.
Okay.
We had to go 28 full years to get to step 25. So we had to go longer than teachers currently do right now.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
And I'll just repeat, that was based on negotiations back in 2008, 2009, which was agreed to by both parties. I mean, there were some that had to go back in steps, and there were a lot that didn't. And was still, yeah. I just think I like the conversation about retirement and all that, but I don't think that's germane to the point. The point is there's clearly a mistake made, and was it a mistake that should be corrected, or was it a mistake that we shouldn't? Our attorney says not, but I think that's the germane point that we should be focusing on.
We haven't had steps 26 through 35 on our salary schedule since 2009, 2010. That was the first year that we were capped out at step 25. And I just feel like we're adding those steps back in. right now, which, I don't know, it doesn't make much sense to me.
Well, and the intent in negotiations was to add steps without adding the step, right? Expansion of the salary schedule so that we could codify who is eligible for the career.
Yeah, there was two criteria. The first criteria was that you had to be beyond step 25.
Yeah.
And then according to the contract, the first criteria was you had to have 26 to 34 experience years. And then the criteria for the second career increment was 35 experience years. As the contract
As it's
was written.
currently written.
Yes, in the contract.
Yeah, but back and forth with GFEA, at the negotiating table, we used language regarding what that equivalent would be for steps, essentially.
And we brought it to the negotiation table because when you hit step 25, yes, you've hit the high amount faster, which is what we want teachers to be able to have. But then when you do a percentage increase or whatever to the scale, you know, it works through, but then everybody else is moving up a step plus getting the percent where those at 25, they're just getting the percent added on. So we wanted to give an extra boost for being at the top because we noticed a lot of schools in Minnesota, that's what they're doing. They're getting to the top of their scales very quickly, and then they're just getting a little extra bump of money each year. And so we wanted to reward those who have been at the top with a little extra.
I think I can clearly state our intent and the intent we understood from GFEA, and then I'll share my opinion about how we can move forward. If you want to imagine that step 25 says steps 25 to 200. It's all contained in the same box. It's not a different number for any step beyond 25. And then getting a number like 26 or 34 or 35 in that last box doesn't bring you to another worksheet, doesn't then start calculating you on years of experience, but we said if you're in that step, 25 through 200, because maybe somebody lives longer than we expect, then if that number is 26 through 34, here's an increment. If it's 35 plus, here's an increment. Now, my personal opinion is, while this is tough conversation, and while we want to do all we can and took lots of big steps as the district to rectify what we thought were some flat years that we wanted to catch up on, made a huge investment in people. I feel like we have clear intent from both sides that we should correct the error by calling these steps across the board and then revisit this at the next negotiation. That's my personal opinion.
Monty, did you have something?
Oh, just that I was in the district and was at 25 for many, many years. There was no 25, oh, now you've taught, but it was always steps. So I was at step 25 for many years and retired after 33 years of teaching, but was still at step 25, but didn't have the increments for having extra years. So when I first saw that, I was like, I think that's a great way to compliment teachers who have been in the district. And thank you, gentlemen. I know I've got to teach driver's ed with Mr. Paintner, so I have lots of great stories to share. And my children have had Mr. Tandesky, so thank you, Mr. Tandesky, for all of your wonderful math prowess that you've shared with my children. So when I read that, I thought, well, that's really, thank you for doing that and for applauding people who are here that many years. People with that many years of experience are the masters of the classroom, and our young teachers can learn from them, and thank you for all you're doing for that. So for just what that's worth, I was really happy to see that was added because there are a lot of teachers in that area, and once you get to the top, like Melissa said, that's kind of it. But you're there because you're enjoying it, hopefully. So, anyway, for what that's worth, it is nice to have a difference and more opportunities for people and some form of gratitude. So, thank you.
Go ahead.
And I think it was done the correct way. It was negotiated, and GFEA came to the board team and they negotiated and they added that, and both sides were in agreement with that, and I think that's the way that's the way to do it. I have a tendency to agree with Dave's comments, and I just point out in the policy that even if the board decides not to accept this grievance, there's another step that is an arbitration procedure that can be gone through above the board. So the board isn't necessarily the final word.
Are there any more points for discussion, either board members, Mr. Painter or Mr. Tedeschi? Go ahead.
I haven't said anything, but to me, it's a language issue, and maybe that's my English background. So it's really the question of steps versus experience. I only served once on the negotiation table, and that was definitely very hard on me personally. So I am relieved not to have served. I think I lost more sleep during that process than I have in the past. So I'm not the right person for negotiations. With that said, if you're saying that you believed that step was the term to use, then I would take it as the recommendation from the attorney, even though I think years of experience are really important. But that was all negotiated in terms of steps. So for me, it started very complicated, but now it's gotten simpler because I'm looking at just the term experience and steps. And so I would lean towards the recommendation of the attorney, which would be opposing your point of view, just because you both parties agreed on the term steps. So.
We have a friend who's an attorney. He's read all these documents and stuff, and he said like Mr. Larson said that the board and GFEA are using parole evidence. That's evidence outside the four corners of the contractual agreement to arrive at the ability to change the word experience years to steps. So there's like 9 parts of parole evidence. I've read more about parole evidence than I ever cared to read again, but one of the parts is mutual mistake. Both parties can agree to mutual mistake, and that's obviously the route you guys are going.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's, the parole evidence rule says to look to the terms of the contract, and if you can discern what the party's intent are there, then that's the party's intent. I think reading through this, we go back and forth with step and experience a little too much to say that this is clear and unambiguous on its face, that it would support going outside of the four corners of the contract to find intent. And I think we're pretty clear as to what our intent was. I recognize Anita doesn't like that, and I get that. But I guess that's my feeling is that if we want to change it, we do it the right way at the negotiating table and address it there. And I think because I brought it up, maybe I'll make a motion if we're ready to do it.
Yeah, we can move forward with a motion if someone's ready to make one.
Individually, correct?
So we'd have to have whatever motion. Yeah, if you have, what motion would you like to make, Joel?
Yeah, looking at this, I appreciate your guys' position, absolutely. But I think that my motion would be to deny the appeal.
Okay, so we would start with Mr. Painter's request since he was first. Well, yeah, but I'm just clarifying.
If you want to group them together, if you feel free to, that's fine.
We'll keep them separate, just for the procedure. So, Joel, your motion is to deny Mr. Painter's
Very good.
grievance. Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, second by Dave. Is there any discussion? Okay, we'll now take a roll call vote. So the motion on the table with a second is to deny Mr. Painter's grievance request.
Palmasino?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Gockler?
Yes.
Shab?
Yes.
Manley is absent. Lunn?
Yes.
And Flynn?
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no, 1 absent.
Okay, motion carries. We now have Mr. Tandeschi's appeal.
I'll make the same motion for Mr. Tandeschi.
Okay, so Joel is making the motion to deny Mr. Tandeschi's appeal. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dave. We'll now take a roll call, or any discussion? Okay, we'll now take the roll call vote.
Shab?
Yes.
Palmasino?
Yes.
Gockler? Larson?
Yes.
Lunn?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Manley is absent. And Flynn?
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no, 1 absent.
Motion carries. Mr. Paintner and Mr. Tandeschi, I'll speak for the board in saying that not often we get teachers coming to talk about hard conversations, and I appreciate you coming and talking to us and using the processes provided to you. According to the policy, there is one more step. If you wish to take that step, we support you in that decision. Additionally, any information that a teacher provides us with related to their contract, related to their experience, does help inform or educate the board in our dealings with policy and in negotiations. So I appreciate the conversation today.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to us tonight.
Yeah.
And thank you also.
Yeah, thank you.
Good night.
Next item on the agenda is other announcements. Any announcements? Go ahead, Brandon.
Just one really quick one. I think you were asked for a short bio on yourself. If you have any questions about that, please ask. Just trying to get those in by Wednesday.
Okay, any board requests for future?
Cynthia was
Go ahead.
wondering what the purpose for that is. Could you talk about the bond thing?
Just a cryptic bio.
Yeah, sorry. Happy to help with that. This is all relative to the new market tax credit that we're pursuing for the Career Impact Academy. There's a whole lot of information involved with that, and one piece of that is your bios.
Okay. Any board requests for future consideration? I don't know the last time we've heard, or in recent years, from the Education Foundation. I'd love to hear an update, especially I think it's fresh on our mind after Giving Hearts Day, but I'd love to hear more about their efforts in working with the Grand Forks Public Schools. School board norms, President Flynn, how'd we do? I think we did okay. Okay, we are now adjourned. Thank you for your time tonight.